Hi guys, welcome back to My Opinion. This is episode 12 and another episode of Maya's Monday Motivation. And this week we're going to be talking about communication, which I touched on last week as we were coming out of talking about the importance of honesty as a leader. And we're going to talk about the importance of communication as a leader, which this is my favorite topic to talk about. I hope you guys, though, are really taking care of yourselves during this time. This is a really interesting time in society. It's really affecting the business that I'm in. Those of you who follow me on social media or know me personally or have known me through my life know that I work full-time in the event production world. I'm in sales, and obviously that's affecting me in my career, but also my clients and my potential clients and our business and our company, which is tough and challenging. But my heart really goes out to the people that actually have been infected by it and are going through this. So my thoughts and prayers are with you. Please continue to take all the precautions that your local government is recommending, the president is recommending, and anything else that's going on. I do think that it's interesting that this is creating such a big scare compared to some of these other things that we've gone through. For some reason, Ebola sticks out big time for me because I was traveling a lot during that time, and I'm like, oh my God, that scared me to death, but I was still traveling like crazy for my job. Still, this is scary, and I did go live the other day. I went live on Saturday, which I made a commitment to you guys that I would start going live. So thank you for those of you who watched it. You guys are awesome with your comments. I appreciate that. And it's really funny because you guys really wanted to know a lot of personal stuff versus stuff about some things about the podcast, which is cool, but some personal stuff. And I'll continue to answer those questions. I have a commitment to you guys. I will be going live once a week for sure. But myself, I was sick. If you follow me on social media, which is probably how you're listening to this, you saw that I got really sick while I was on my work trip. And it has taken me a month to recover from, I had influenza A on top of that walking pneumonia. So it was really tough. And I had to recover from that. So it's been challenging. So I appreciate you guys being patient with me. I was able to go live, though, and answer your questions, but I'll continue to do that, which is so fun, and I really enjoy that. But, again, thoughts and prayers out to everybody that has been directly affected by the coronavirus. This is a really scary thing if you are going through that. I just had influenza A and walking pneumonia, and it took me a month, and it's been tough. Like, I still have, like, a cough going on, which is why you might hear a raspiness going on as I'm doing the podcast. But so today on Maya's Monday Motivation, we are going to talk about communication, which is like one of my favorite topics in the world to talk about in every aspect of relationships, not even just with work or leadership or love or family. Like it is my favorite topic because I think that everything can be fixed with proper communication or come to a resolution or come to a better understanding. And that's why I think like my biggest passion within leadership, within inspiration, within all of the things that I talk about is truly communication, which is why I have the podcast. I've always really loved being able to communicate effectively and well, and that's something I thrive off of. So being able to talk about this, I don't know if this will just be one podcast, to be honest with you, but the focus on this podcast is talking about leadership qualities, right? We're talking about this over the next couple weeks, and we started last week with honesty and integrity. It's an easy transition this week to go from honesty and integrity to communication because you start with that. That's your core. But how do you translate that? How do you communicate that? How do you bring that to your communication style? I think this is the most important thing as a leader. So how are you a good communicator as a leader? How do you effectively communicate as a leader? Step 1 is listening. Or the number one thing I think is listening. These are not in any particular order, but this one for me I think is number 1. The rest are not in any particular order, but listening is number 1 for me. Because who wants to listen to a monologue? And in full transparency, this is why this was difficult for me to transition my podcast into just me speaking. Because I'm used to listening to my direct reports, whomever I'm mentoring. I'm used to listening and taking that information and then giving the feedback afterwards, or whatever information they need, or the help or the assistance or feedback. Then it's not even just with your one-on-one situations, because if you guys have been listening to the podcast, you know how passionate I am about the fact that when you're a leader, listening is so key. So setting up those opportunities to listen. Do you have a one-on-one set up every single week with whomever reports to you? Sometimes your team is really, really big, so you might have to find a way to funnel that out. So how do you make that happen? And there are ways to do that and then get the individual attention. Beyond that, when you have a team, because then you're going to have a weekly call too, are you talking to your team the entire time? Or are they talking to you? Is it an actual conversation? Because if you're having a monologue with your team, you're not communicating with your team. And this falls into listening. You need to be listening to your team because you become a better leader. You become more effective. You become a better mentor to them, and you are more effectively able to lead them when you're able to listen to what's happening. But then as you're listening to what's happening with them, you're able to resolve the issues or the problems, or you're able to hear the wins that are happening in the field for them. Those group calls, I'm not in love with group calls. Those of you who listen to me on the cast, those of you who will continue to listen to me, no, I don't love group calls. I think group calls are necessary, but individual calls are mandatory. That is a Maya quote, a my opinion quote. It's so important that you have that one-on-one time. But group calls are so important too, because it gives that time for your team to bond and for you to show how you effectively communicate to your entire team. But it should never be a monologue. If you are speaking in a monologue fashion to your team, you're not effectively communicating. You don't care what they have to say. You don't care about their feedback. You literally don't care. I feel very passionately about that. If you are holding a group call and you are needing to deliver some mandatory information that's coming out from the company, it's absolutely 100% appropriate where you deliver that information. But if there is no time for questions, or if there is no time for input, or if there's no... A leader does not create a monologue environment. It's that simple. Complimenting and criticism. This is another step or topic that I like to talk about. So creating a complimentary environment. I know I've touched on this in past podcasts, but really focusing on people's strengths and the people that report to you, it's really called complimenting and criticism. So when you really focus on people's strengths and lift them up and talk about what they're good at versus the criticism of what they're not doing well, which I have said in the past too, this could be a whole podcast, but this is a part of communication. This is a part of how you effectively communicate as a leader. When you tell one of your direct reports, someone even that you're just mentoring, but we're really talking about the people that are reporting to you, we're talking about leadership, and you're telling them, you know what, Susie Q, I love using that name because who's Susie Q? Susie Q, you are so strong and amazing at building relationships. Lean into that. That builds this relationship with you and your direct report in a totally positive way and in a different way than you pointing out a flaw right away in that person. And it builds the relationship in a way where we're talking about complimenting and criticism, when you are needing to give a criticism or give some feedback that might not be super positive, it's going to be easier for both parties. And not that being a leader is easy, but it's going to be easier because you have now built that trust in her, but also built her up because you have pointed out what she's good at. You have pointed out that you recognize it, and you've built trust too, which is so important as a leader. But when you lift people, I feel so strongly about this, and I've talked about it before, and I will continue to talk about it to the end of time. When you build people up and you talk about their strengths and you focus on that, and that's what we're talking about with complimenting and criticism, they are so much more receptive when you come to them with, hey, look, I don't know if you dealt with this situation the right way. Let's walk through that and talk through that. So complimenting and criticism is another step in leadership, and it's another thing in communication that is so important that you handle appropriately and the right way. Focusing on the positive so that when you do have to deal with the negative or the criticism, you're set up for success. So in that, we were talking about trust, which trust is another touch point. People will trust you when you are honest and transparent and act with integrity, which is what we talked about last week. But how do you achieve that trust? It is through clear communication, through the fact that you are listening, through the fact that you are hearing them, through the fact that you don't have a monologue and you don't just talk at them. I cannot tell you how many supervisors I have had that literally just talk at me. I never built any connection with them. I revolted them in many ways. But they weren't leaders. They weren't true leaders. The leaders that I connected with were those that really sat there and listened and took in what I had to say. It makes you feel appreciated and heard. And then what's so fascinating is they grow too. It's an interesting process that happens, and that's why you are bonded. And like I've said many times too, it's why I have these long-standing relationships with some of these leaders that I've had in my life. So that trust is built on, yes, what we talked about last week, honesty and integrity, but the listening and the lack of the monologue. This is not, right? The relationship is not a podcast. Probably why I had to work on not having a co-host anymore and just being able to deliver this information to you guys on my own, because I am used to a two-way street and listening and then giving feedback and going back and forth, which is truly my passion and I love. But complimenting and criticism too builds that trust. When you're genuine and you tell your direct reports, and even mentors, like whatever your relationship, I say that all the time. When you're genuine about the positive, the criticism will be taken so well and effectively, and you will watch the people that report to you just grow exponentially because they understand that you're coming from a good place and you're coming from an honest place, a completely honest place. Verbal and non-verbal communication is really important too, because we're talking right now about actual speech and how we speak to our team and how we talk to them, and are we too critical, are we too nice, but non-verbal is important as well. So when someone comes to speak to us and they're reporting to us, are we closed off, are we actually open? I have reported to a couple of supervisors and I just never felt like I could even go to them because they would sit there always with their hands crossed or were reading emails on the computer, shuffling through papers, weren't even listening. Interestingly enough, to my surprise, they would send an email later or would call me later following up on the conversation. The trust wasn't there. The honesty, the integrity, all those things were lost because I didn't feel connected and I didn't feel heard because of the non-verbal cues that were going on. So I think a really good leader shows transparency and honesty and integrity through their communication, also through the nonverbal cues. Show that you're paying attention. Listen, look, pay attention to that person, because if they're coming to you for a reason. And I'm very passionate about that as well. Nothing is more important than the people that are working for you, because the people that are working for you are making whether you own a small business or you're running a huge company, you are a part of something. And whether it's your small business, if it's your small business, it's your business, you better be listening. But even if you're running a really large company, you're running a department or something or whatever it is, and your success is dependent upon that. But beyond that, I'm so passionate about leadership. You could impact this. They might not be with you for more than a year or 2 years or whatever it is, but you could impact their life forever. So you can't put that email down. You can't put that letter down. You can't put whatever down for a second, or uncross your arms, or really just engage and show that verbal acknowledgement. So you can't sit there and show the nonverbal acknowledgement, like making eye contact, nodding. And then there should be a follow-up with the verbal. Yes, understood. Let me think about this, whatever it needs to be. But those are really strong cues. Meetings are another huge topic for communication. We spend so much of our time in meetings that are wasted. I have come to appreciate this topic a lot with where I am. I will only call meetings when I think it's effective. I will keep them very short, sweet, to the point, precise. I work remotely. But when you're a leader, effective communication means that you come to the table in a meeting. There's an objective at every single meeting. You lead the meeting, but it comes back to, it's not a monologue. You may open the meeting, you may lead the meeting, but it's not a monologue. You don't talk to your team. It's a conversation. You hired these people to work for you for a reason, or they've been integrated into your team for a reason. There's a time to speak and there's a time to listen, and a meeting is no different. And if this meeting could have been an email, we've all seen those memes out there. If this could have been an email instead, you need to make it that way, because our life is moving in a totally different direction with that. In so many ways. Openness is another huge topic for communication. And I know a lot of leaders struggle with this because they wonder, if you're a small business, they wonder, like, what do I share? Do I share too much with my team? Do I let them know, like, all the financial things I go through? Do I let them know, exactly, like, the struggles we're going through or the highs we're going through? Or as a leader, you need to go with your gut on that. But the more open that you are with your team, the more they will respect you. I promise you that. I promise you that. However, there is a flip side on this. You need to always be open with your team. It's back to the honesty of last week. You need to be honest with them. But it is also your duty as a leader to shield them from any unnecessary distress and anxiety that they could feel about their job. To never misguide them or mislead them. Learning to walk that trapeze and learning to say, okay, what do I share? What do I hold back? I always err on the side of share. Always be really transparent and honest with them. But if there are things that are premature or could make somebody feel panicked because it's an unknown and it's unlikely to happen, that would be the only time that I would say to not share it as a leader. But it's always really good to be transparent and honest. No one likes a surprise like that, a negative surprise. So openness is really good. And again, it plays into the most important qualities in a leader. Honesty and transparency and integrity, like we talked about last week, which is why I wanted to talk about communication this week and why I'm talking about it so much. And I feel like it could be 2 episodes. It's so important to me. Inspiration. Being an inspirational leader is what keeps people working for you. It's what keeps people getting up every single day They're proud to be a part of your team. They're proud to be a part of whatever company that you're running. There's a reason why people say, like, I work for Google, I work for Amazon. Like, they're so super pumped to be a part of that because they're inspired. They're inspired about the things that these companies are doing. And I know I'm throwing just some big names out there, but there's a reason behind that. So as a leader, think about what inspires your team. Break it down and think about what inspires your team as individuals. Find that out. You'll find that out when you break it down with the W's. That's really important. Find out each one of their W's. When you really understand your team, then you can continue to inspire them. But typically they're working for your company for a reason. They're inspired by you, or they're inspired by something about your company. Continue to drive that, communicate that, and communicate that message. And through honest communication and listening to them and listening to what they're passionate about will continue to drive that passion. I think the most important takeaway from all of the communication aspects that we talk about in this particular podcast is listening. Having a sales background myself, I am a talker. I like to talk. I find that salespeople are talkers. They're big talkers. But a really good salesperson knows how to listen. And they got into sales because they know how to talk. They're good at sales because they know how to listen. And they know how to spit back and say exactly what they heard. They know the appropriate time for which. And I feel like that gets even more escalated because not every salesperson, by the way, is a good leader, which is a whole nother podcast too. But if you are a good listener, you will be a good leader. But you also need to be able to speak to your people and inspire them. So it's about balancing those two and being able to effectively communicate what your mission is, what your company is going to do, what you guys are what problem you're solving. Communication is everything. If you're not able to communicate the who, what, when, where, why for you and your company, and you're not able to resolve all of those things and speak about those things, but then also listen to your team because you hired those people for a reason. You should always hire people that can bring much more to the table than you could ever just do by yourself. That's why you hired them. You need to trust them for that. So that's why you listen to them. And that is what is so important about communication. I think we do know that a monologue can occasionally happen when an employee comes to HR or an employee comes to you with a problem, but that's on the other side. As leaders, we are not speaking a monologue, which is why me speaking by myself on a podcast was a whole new thing for me. I've had a co-host, or I've always been listening to someone else and then reacting, or asking a question and then reacting. But as a leader, when you're talking about something, there might be a monologue in that sense. But generally, just listening is so crucial and so important. And it's such a passionate thing for me. Because the more you listen to your people, and the more you get feedback from them, the better you become as a leader, and the better your company becomes, and the better whatever you're doing. You're selling a product, a service, you get better as a team. And I know that for a fact. So thank you guys so much for listening to episode 12. It's crazy. Of Maya's Monday motivation on My Opinion. Please send me your DMs. You guys know where to find me at Maya Roffler, or at my very own page that I've now started on Instagram at My Opinion Podcast, and also on Facebook at My Opinion Podcast. And we will see you guys next week, continuing to talk about leadership qualities and the top characteristics in leaders. And I hope you guys have a great week, and please stay safe. Thanks so much.